nervous here and there, but we're ready for Game 3. And you were right. We're going to Braxis.
We're going to Braxis. Gale Force chose it? Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here. So they are not going to take the risk of pushing that to a potential game number 5. But they feel like this is enough that they need this here for them. I think that's a safer one. Again, it's a little bit on momentum, and it's one that they can probably rely on winning.
It's got the best music for us.
It's got the best music for us.
Also, best stage setup. I love the colors.
Do you actually?
Of Braxis. Yeah.
Feels very red versus
Josh
blue.
likes it too, so 2 versus 1 here if you don't like it.
Sad days. Feels bad. Never going to change now. Braxis, though, for Gale Force eSports, it is their favorite. It is one that, considering the games that we've seen so far, if Freedom plays as slow as they've been playing and not taking that moment to kind of just be like, hey, Gale Force, we're done letting you manipulate the map in the way that you want to, then there might be a shot. But otherwise, I feel like Gale Force, huge upper hand here. Not only because of the territory, but because the passiveness
there it is
displayed.
So if we can't first pick Genji, you don't get him. You do not get him. Team Freedom, though, will be able to get Tassadar. Help out with the wave clear, the damage, the potentially mobility with Force Wall.
Ball up.
But especially the hyper carry. And Gale Force are going to take away the 2 from the trifecta of Tass, Vala, Ariel.
What do we got here?
This is, once again, this is the exact same type of composition that Freedom played versus Superstars. Tassadar, Stitches, Chromie.
Oh, man. This is the exact same, huh?
Mm-hmm. With even the
but it was
Stitches, Chromie were swapped, but otherwise same 3.
But extremely passive 3-man. Semi-effective 2 in that game, if I'm recalling correctly off the top of my head. I remember being very unimpressed with the laning setup of Freedom.
Tasta Haka top versus Zagara Chen.
Yeah, that was where I was just like, okay, Superstars should be able to body this a lot harder. They were passive, right? Yeah. I'm not crazy.
No, you're exactly right. It came down to Dahaka stalking in for a pick around
and then
6 or so.
It was like level 4, and then they never restored their laning setup here. So Freedom here, I was like, I feel like a better team will definitely be able to punish this a lot more effectively, and Gale Force very much is that team. So we'll see if I'm wrong or if Freedom, in fact, is got some kind of master plan strategy up it. Ooh, that came out of nowhere. Probius ban?
No Tomorrow versus Gale Force. Was that No Tomorrow versus Gale Force when they played that?
Where we saw the Probius come out?
Yes. The Probius lost, though.
Yeah, like we've seen like 1 to 2
really
Probius.
Badly.
Like, yeah.
It lost pretty badly.
He was just like trying to touch the lane, and Dahaka was like, by the way, with my new passive, every minion wave that comes this direction, I get faster than you, and then I can kill you.
And Probius had his heroic nerfed.
Yeah. Probius had a couple things nerfed over time to where his laning matchups are not nearly as convincing as they were before. We see Arthas and Dahaka both being hovered for Freedom. For me, the Dahaka doesn't stand out that much as like a ban here, right? Even though Dahaka used to be, I mean, mainstream of Braxis holdout. With how North America plays this map, solo laners don't have value.
No, it's not a 1-4.
It's not a 1-4. So the ones are not worth of the ban.
I like that a lot better.
I completely agree. It's just, it's not, Freedom's not the only team that's been doing it. I've just been really surprised that we keep worrying about 1-4s when we're not running 1-4s. Like, who cares about them anymore? So it's nice to see that flex here for Freedom, going more towards the support and removing Uther.
Now, I wonder if Gale Force will still want a double support with something like a Brightwing.
Pick Malf. If you take one, I want it to be Malf. I do not give Stitches and Malfurion synergy together. Like, it's if you've denied the Uther, you take away the Malfurion, and that suddenly makes Stitches that much more crippling. And let's be honest here, Gilly, we finally got to see a North American team bust out Twilight Dream. It is insane still. It's still a game winner. It is really, really good. He has a lot of threat when it comes to the minions. Moonfire, like, I'm not a huge Malf advocate, but for
it sounds like you are, though.
The circumstances that we've seen it, he has more of a place than we've seen in North America. I know that much. He's seen almost nothing. It's like when we absolutely have to.
I don't know, though. Gale Force, I feel like if they were to take another support, it would be Brightwing.
Yeah, it's not.
Because of the global, the mobility that she has the mobility she provides to the team. Brightwing Muradin. And the Muradin, of course.
You keep, no matter how many drafts we go through, I still only can just throw out my heart there, Gilly.
Oh, no, I totally respect it. And I definitely understand wanting to take away Malfurion with Stitches. figured it would probably be Brightwing.
Yeah,
and we didn't even
Octophase.
touch on Muradin either and how central he is to the old strat.
To the old strat.
The old Gale Force strat.
The old roundabout, rope-a-dope, whatever you're going to call this strategy. We haven't really come up with a nickname for it. It's just because it's more of a rotation idea.
There you go.
Yeah, but that wasn't the team
Yeah.
that was supposed to pick it.
I'm just trying to help you out.
What do we got for the last pick here on the side of Gale Force eSports? With the double support, they've already got the hype carry. Somebody who can hold their own on a lane. Be that kind of solo representative or somebody a little bit more kind of all over the place when it comes to, what is it?
No, I did raise my hand, but I realize now that that maybe looked like I knew what it was going to be. It's Mike? I think it's Mike.
Yeah, it's Mike that we're still missing here. So, like, who's that off role that they want to go into? Like, is the Illidan still a viable option for them? I feel like not.
What about Arthas? Arthas into
yeah.
Dahaka. If you're going to have that solo, you could potentially have Brightwing up there for a shift. She comes in, has a polymorph. Ooh. Or Unending Hatred.
It's the Illidan.
That would be another Gale Force pick, definitely.
Yeah. The Illidan, some of the priority for Gale Force here, the fact that it made it this late, it is still going to be, I think, a really impactful pick. It's just going to be less relevant because, again, the Illidan into the Dahaka is a world that is not Brax's holdout. That's not a 1v1. I've just been surprised at like how good Illidan is in a 1v1 in Dahaka, but Dahaka's still so first pick in North America. Then nobody's Illidan countering automatically. Arthas is kind of the, at least I can trade well into it. It seems like that's kind of North America's answer, where other parts of the world is the Illidan. So that's why I was like, there's no world where Gale Force goes, now is the time to venture into the Illidan department. A lot higher risk, I felt like, but then they end up still committing. It's one of those where the world has told me that this is not an insane pick, but North America hasn't been doing this for 3 to 4 weeks, so I just assume it's never going to happen, and then they still end up committing to it. So strange to see the kind of fluctuation, but one, I'm not disappointed in. I think Illidan, anytime I can get him into a Dahaka, I'm like, yeah, make Dahaka useless.
Yeah, replace the Brightwing with an Uther and
I'm
maybe a different warrior, and you would have a very E-Star composition. And who loves E-Star compositions more than Fan? I think just about nobody. So we'll see how Gale Force eSports can pull off the composition.
I thought you were going to say you.
If they, it's Fan and then me right here, just right behind. Let's get into the game. Game number 3 on Brax's holdout between Gale Force eSports and Team Freedom.
You know, that's like asking who likes Tyrael or Brightwing more than you know? I just felt like it was not a fair throw out there. For how big of a fangirl you've been of E-Star to give Fan that credit?
For forever. Well, you know, I was giving our teams some credit. Fan has been drafting a lot like the teams, the mid-season brawl, and especially like E-Star with pulling back the Vala Ariel Uther. But honestly, a whole lot of teams in North America have been playing that more.
Yeah.
Even in Death loves that composition, having the Vala double support and the Illidan too, and that is one of their faves.
Call me crazy. I can't recall exactly off the top of my head. I want to say, first glance, last time Freedom ran this, it was Shando's Clarity at 1. Do you know that?
Really
okay, I might be wrong. Let me tell you.
I don't think it was Moonburn though.
Let me put it this way. I know that at some point in North America, I remember recalling a very awkward laning phase in the early parts of the game that had a Chromie and a Malfurion together, and it was both with the mana at level 1, but then also with Shando's Clarity on Malfurion. And
yes,
I was just
because they took Mobius Loop over Dragon's
Exactly,
Eye.
and the whole time I was sitting there going like, why do both of you need to give that mana? Like, a lot of people underestimate how much like mana Chromie actually costs when you take this talent. It's pretty much nothing. Her spells are extremely efficient. Yes, she can go but like the rate at which she does go is so very slow compared to most heroes. So I was so confused at seeing that together on a map where wave clear is huge. But now we get the Malfurion Moonburn, and we still in fact see the same level 1 coming out from Chromie.
Maybe that means that we'll have the adjustment of Dragon's Eye at level 7.
Hopefully. And the biggest thing for me is just to not see that overcommitment towards the Mana Fear, and a little bit more into the Malfurion with the Moonburn, because again, Moonburn is just neglected all throughout North America. Nice polymorph here up on top, no dimensional shift left, and he's gonna need it. He goes down.
Kieran nearly got the counter kill on Michael Udall, but not quite. So Team Freedom losing out on First Blood, but running the laning phase that we saw from them before, which has having Tassadar and Dahaka together in the top lane, and Gale Force has responded in kind by having Muradin and Brightwing and Illidan up there too, with Brightwing going up. So we'll see how Gale Force wants to continue with the laning phase, especially since we know that they like to roam around with Muradin and steal beacons away from the backside, really from their opponents. So he's going to start to cycle back down to the bottom.
Just keeping them busy here. All the members of Gale Force, we got K1 Pro and Fan down there, just ridding of the minion wave, dodging the chromie damage. This is all their goal is Cap just try to be a distraction, be a nuisance elsewhere, and eventually get an Akka phase teleport, usually gonna get a kill with that. And that's where you see the shrine dance of Gale Force eSports, but Freedom so far is doing a lot better job of dealing with that with this 3-2 split. Yeah,
they are. King Caffeine has to rotate up just to try to get one of the beacons. But in that amount of time, 36% was channeled, and Volley gets taken out. Team Freedom probably got a hook there with the follow-up.
Yeah, this is not good for Gale Force eSports. They're losing both one and the top lane and the bottom lane. And normally we have the phrase, if you lose the one, you lose the four, you're going to lose the game. But, I mean, now it's not so much a 1-4, but it's the same story. Lose top, lose bot. Things do not look good on Braxis. It's so amazing to be able to see the fact that Freedom here is even putting up this much of a fight early on against Gale Force eSports, because it seems like nobody can touch them on a map like Braxis.
Team Freedom still picked Mobius Loop over Dragon's Eye for the Chromie. See what the rest of the sevens are as Team Freedom gets close to there. Kira is being body blocked for such a long time, but has the supporting of Dansky as well as himself, and is just fine trying to slow down Gale Force eSports and their push against the towers.
Yeah, they're doing a very good job being able to stall that out. Now Fan, waiting on the sides, has shown himself now, and it's going to be a cycle pressure up to the top half for Gale Force eSports. What are they going to do? That solo Ariel has a camp pressuring. She can't leave, otherwise she gives up free damage. So Vala's going to cycle down, but that leaves a huge momentum swing here for Team Freedom if they cycle this rotation proper.
Yeah, a lot of times when we see teams battle on Braxis holdout, it's the team that isn't forced to make a lot of rotations that ends up being the team to win the first beacon phase, because they don't have to waste the time in transit. They have the better setup, and they force their opponents to respond, and in that amount of time they can take away beacons here and there and slowly get ahead. We saw the 35-36%, now they've gone up a little bit more to the 46%. They're starting to get ahead in experience. They had a mercenary camp in the bottom. They're going to try to take back this bottom beacon again while Tassadar and Dahaka hold on to top.
But we did see Gale Force pick up the camp, and they're going to use that as a window to cycle more pressure. But I mean, when Kira's 2v1 in, up on the top half of the map, maybe the Dahaka needed the aggro I was originally questioning. It's no longer that 1 versus 1, but he's been such a monster on that top shrine. Fan finally coming in with the vault, getting the damage, and they kill Cure.
Gale Force eSports is going to lose out on the beacons unless, even if they're able to channel up to 100% now, they're still going to be dealing with a very large Zerg rush from Team Freedom. But what they have done well is being able to rotate up and pressure the lanes, the structures against Team Freedom. So they've still been able to get a couple of towers and the gate. Now they're starting to channel. Team Freedom is desperate to try to get Gale Force off of these points before Gale Force can catch up in beacons and undo the lead that Team Freedom would have been able to accrue, but it's just not enough.
Yeah, and you suddenly see that was a much better initiation there for Gale Force. And when it came to the rotations, like having the fact that they had the Illidan into the Dahaka with the Ariel backing it up, they committed the resources with a Brightwing, got a couple of percentage, but it's essentially Freedom is abusing the fact that they have a double mismatch in laning, and that Illidan is the key part to, I feel like, a lot of the laning on the side of Gale Force eSports, and you can't double the Illidan, so one of the two lanes is always going to struggle.
Polymorph again. Dansky and Kier hanging out in the bottom lane now while the top is being held by Team Freedom, holding back the members of Gale Force. Even chasing down Muradin. Hook. Roots are there too.
Gonzo.
Those roots also are reducing the healing that someone's able to receive, which will come in very handy against the double support that Team Gale Force eSports has drafted.
We got ourselves a Skullcracker.
I looked at that, but then I was like, oh, it's Calf. He's going to give him the axe.
I mean, it seems strange, though. The Skullcracker without a Morales on the other side, there is no heavy channeled heroic whatsoever, or just even spell across the board. So I want to see what is his main focus. You know, I feel like he's going to be very... It's more than just I need the bonus CC to be able to get given the axe damage. I feel like this is a little bit more on... They want to try and get some kind of interrupt, whether it be onto the attempted Twilight Dream, maybe the Gorge or something of the like.
Yeah. Gale Force have done such a fantastic job of being able to siege down towers and gates. Even though they haven't been able to get the beacons, they're still getting structures down, which is nice that they're able to realize that, hey, the beacons aren't going the way we would have liked, so we're at least going to make sure that we can get something else. Twilight Dream was used, Muradin did not go down.
Yeah, I do want to commend Gale Force for that adjustment. The fact that in this game, their original thought of how the laning was going to work out didn't work at all. 92% was how much they gave up for free. The minute they started like accepting that that was not okay and the direction it was going, they made adjustments and they managed to obtain 38%. Yeah, that's not that impressive, but it's mainly the fact that they are not running the same thing over and over again until they end up losing the game. They mix it up, and yes, now Freedom has that 100% Zerg rush, but the 10 mark's been hit. Suddenly the entire game dynamic is shifted around after 10s.
Now that's very true. We have the hunt again for Gale Force. It'll be Strafe to go along with Ariel, making sure that Vala can give that constant hope to her. Still clean kill though for Brightwing, so more of a supporting and mobility too for her over having Emerald Wind for something like boss fights, isolation. Dahaka is up against Illidan in the top, and Illidan is just freely hanging out on top of the fort while Dahaka gets rid of the Zerg there. But the push happening in the bottom, this is where Team Freedom starts to get ahead.
Yeah, Illidan, such a monster into that Dahaka. Nice hook on the fan, force the Aegis, but I don't even think he can make it out after. He very much cannot. That is now another kill for Team Freedom as they move up to this keep. Gorge, they're gonna walk it back, slowing sands. The Twilight, it's there, but Cap has already got off his avatar.
Silenced. He's going down.
And Akaface, oh, look at that root, max range. That is the value there. That was without a Loon's Grace too. That was legitimately the last pixel possible to hit that root. And Collusion says, boys, I got this. We got Brightwing, and we got to keep.
You know why I adore that Strangling Vines pickup so much too against the composition that Gale Force has is once someone shows with a Crystal Aegis, even if there's a hope bar afterward, you're going to reduce the healing off of that. And that enabled Team Freedom to be able to get so many kills with that phase. They get the first keep of the game, whereas Gale Force were staying fairly even in experience, even in structures. With that Zerg rush, the hooks, the roots, everything that Team Freedom have at their disposal, they have climbed massively ahead in this game.
Yeah, maybe, you know, regretting the Malfurion versus the Brightwing here, Gilly. Because Collusion's putting up a pretty good argument for him right now.
He always puts up a good argument for Malfurion.
He has got some of the most impactful Twilight Dreams in all of North America. And one of the few who still plays him even after the major nerfs, losing the cleanse there at the 7 tier. But now Gale Force is down without a keep and 2 levels down. They are nowhere near that 13 talent tier. The Guardians are yet to be cleared, and they won't be cleared.
This is kind of a cool adaptation, no pun intended, for Cure's build on Dahaka. Instead of getting what we normally see where you're focusing on the movement speed upgrade, at level 1 getting tissue regeneration so that he can increase his health regeneration, and then you also increase the max essence you can hold, and then getting Primal Rage at 13, which is the better combo with that, so that you have 1% increased attack damage per essence store. And if you consider the fact that we have Kala's Embrace, which increases the lifesteal plasma shield, he's more of a attack damage battle Dahaka. And he's going straight after both K1 Pro and Akaface.
They're just absolutely ruining this fight. But on the backside, Mikey-Doll was able to at least pick off Chromie. Eventually, Collusion gets the final kill. Dwarf Toss interrupted halfway through thanks to that nice root once more.
Oh, man.
4-for-1 trade. Gale Force has got to be just questioning everything they knew and held true before this series, because right now they're getting bodied, Gilly. I mean, look at it. There is no part of this game can you be like, well, at least Gale Force had that. The best part about this game was that they didn't lose the Zerg rush fast. That is it.
They got some structures, but they didn't end up even getting the fort up in the top lane that Illidan was on. Cure was able to save that. And Team Freedom are just about to have the 16 spike to 13. Gale Force are going for a last-ditch effort of the fight over this boss. Michael Udall has hunted in. Polymorph on the back, but Cure is going to stay strong, being able to use his adaptation to stay alive. Forcing the Ice Block on Akaface. Ariel gets taken out of the Crystal Aegis 2. The boss has been nabbed. Everyone falling apart for Gale Force eSports as Team Freedom is taking them down one by one.
Yeah, taking them down one by one and looking now to be able to end the game. They've got 2 catapults stacked up on bottom. They've got the boss with another catapult there on top, prepped nice and clean. And with the 16 Talontiers, even though this is very early into the game, it still should very much be enough. And that means, Gilly, if they do this, they're actually ahead. Especially, man, that Twilight Dream opener, that should be it for sure.
They're not only ahead. Team Freedom just beat Gale Force eSports on the map that for Gale Force should have been
the free win.
Yes. Granted, I believe they also lost to Tempo Storm on Braxis. So people are figuring things out. But that was the morale booster for Gale Force. That's the, we won last game, now let's get ahead in the series. Let's give ourselves the opportunity to have 2 wins up over our opponent and make our opponent sweat a little. And Freedom says, nah.
Nah. And now,
We're
you know,
good.
I had the theory of, like, can Gale Force risk pushing that to 5 and everything? The answer is, I mean, it's probably a good thing they didn't, because that would have been the series. Now with Freedom winning over Braxis, again, the series just turned right on over on its head. It suddenly goes like, is this the slow play of Freedom that eventually Gale Force lets them have that mistake? They just body them on their own map.
Freedom were able to figure out the laning phase in a way that made Gale Force respond to them, which is not something that we've seen in quite a while, really, for Gale Force, especially really when you consider phase 1 and how dominant Gale Force was once they figured out their strategy of things like backdooring the beacons with Muradin, with things like Valera. And even when people did start to figure things out, they always seemed one step ahead in their ability to make the right calls, the right adaptations to still be able to win the game. But that wasn't the case here. You did see the adaptation in the way they were setting up lanes. They were trying to take down the towers, the gates, open up so that they could not get behind in experience. But because of how strong that first Zerg Rush wave was for Team Freedom, Gale Force got into a position where recovering was just going to be so difficult, and they couldn't.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of that was still into the drafting department for Gale Force. I feel like if they figure out some of the things with the draft, make some adjustments. I personally feel like the Brightwing is like too far. I definitely understand why we keep seeing the Brightwing with them. Akaface has always been a huge Brightwing player, and yes, Brightwing does show a little bit more into the meta, but again, like looking at that last game, to commit to the Brightwing in that department, you need to be making sure that you have a very objectively powerful other things, and that the Brightwing is kind of like the lesser of the evils type deal, not the this is better than these other options, and this is where they keep going. And it's Gale-Force has done that in the past with specific heroes. It's not surprising to see that, but that one for me is just like I feel like that is way too high to be. And the mouth on the other side, it gave a perfect argument as to why you just don't give that up for free. You know, the Illidan to Haka argument is the same question I have with, like, where's Malf in NA? You know, like, why do we see some of those high spikes over the Malfurion? Because, like, Twilight Dream is insane.
It's pretty good.
And so is Roots.
For there, it did seem like, I mean, Freedom had the Tassadar into Haka, so Gale Force knew where the laning setup was going to be taking place. It was very likely going to be the Tassadar to Haka in the top once again. So having Brightwing to be able to go back and forth is another option for backdooring shrines, especially being able to phase shift in wherever she's needed, trying to get the mobility advantage between the beacons, but Freedom just didn't care. Once they had their setup with the 3 and then the 2, they just did not care. They were able to sit somewhere and hold on to a beacon.
That's all you need.
Often both.
Yeah, and we have the map for game number 4 ready. Let's